Each individual has his own distinctive personality and take on things. But the jewel in the group is undoubtedly Chris Martin. Ambitious, softly spoken, relentlessly creative, and seized by a desire to make Coldplay as great as they can be. He is the pivotal member of the quartet.
Chris Martin is like, for me, he's a fascinating mix of, sometimes he does things that you think, well, why has he done that then? That's a bit strange. And other times you think that's just great, you know, it's really good to see rock people doing this sort of thing. Because there's a lot of bland rock stars out there. You know, people criticise the pop genre, but there's a lot of boring, middle-class kids wearing leather jackets that they think the Velvet Underground would have wore, you know, and it's like, come on, you know, you need more than that. So I think Chris Martin's a very welcome antidote to all of that. He has been criticised for being bombastic and sort of pompous with this whole charity thing, but, you know, that's a great thing to do. I don't think he should be criticised. If you don't like it, don't contribute to the charity. But you can't deny that he's better than sort of snorting cocaine. At least he's out there doing something a bit more, you know, useful. So I think his personality is very interesting. He's kind of, at the moment, he's caught, I think, because he knows he's a global rock star and he knows he doesn't like what comes with that, but it's a fact. So he's got to face up to that. And there was a lot of trouble before the second album, a lot of rumour within the industry that he was kind of struggling to understand that he would leave his house and there might be a guy taking a photograph of him.
Chris has got an amazing sense of humour, very self-deprecating, always, you know, the first one to take the mickey out of himself, and suddenly doesn't believe any praise he gets from anybody. As much as he puts a lot of, you know, work into the band and does want them to be the best band in the world, he's always the first one to criticise, you know, himself, you know, for letting everybody else down when he's actually, you know, the one pulling the whole thing.
As a frontman, to look like he looks, to have the kind of presence that he's got, he's a great start. But then to walk up on stage and sing in that way, with the control that he's got in the falsetto, as well as the tone, and yet somehow he makes it sound like he's talking. It's almost like a conversation, even though the melody's all over the shop. And that's a real skill. But he couldn't do that if the three people behind him were just all vying for attention. And that is Coldplay's greatest strength, is that the three people who most of the public don't really know much about are the most controlled. And I think that's a real plus.
I think all three of them have got in common, the other three in the band, apart from Chris, have got in common that they don't spoil the songs that are written. Yeah. They all add something, but they don't like overcrowd any of their songs. They all know when not to play and when to play, and they all add melody and hooks. Yeah. Guys' bass lines are always adding something to the songs, but they're never like kind of
overbearing. Yeah. And it's kind of it must be weird for them because it's like Coldplay is largely about Chris.
Though singer and lyricist Chris Martin invariably commands most of the media attention within the band, Coldplay are born of a four-way dynamic that is utterly interdependent.
I think the personalities of the band are so closely tied with their musical roles that, you know, that mirrors what I was saying earlier about the other three knowing when to sit back. If you notice on the awards ceremonies, they all walk up at the same time. But then somehow they just drift back and Chris Martin comes in and does the acceptance speech. And I think that sums up what Coldplay are about in terms of personality. You know, their private lives are very closely guarded, and yet Chris Martin is in Heat magazine with his Hollywood fiancée. And I think that's the same with the other three. They don't do many interviews, and they do interviews. Chris Martin takes the lead. And I think they're very happy doing that. You know, otherwise there would be more internal friction than there is. I think in terms of driving the music, Johnny Buckland is clearly a central role, and I think his personality likes to just keep pushing and experimenting. And like I said before, Will and Guy, I think, are more happy to sort of provide a really solid foundation, which is equally important.
In October 2000, the band embarked upon a major 22-day UK tour, supported by the band Low Gold, who remember Coldplay well.
Will is a lovely, lovely man. He rescued me one evening on tour, the very last night of our tour. We played at Shepherd's Bush, and for some reason I kind of run out of money, had a bad night with a girlfriend, had a little bit too much to drink, got stuck, missed the last tube, and I kind of wandered back to the venue, having left the venue, and everyone was kind of leaving, and there was Will, and he's just a lovely man. He just said, "Come home with me tonight," and he took me home to his house in Kennington, and he made me tea, and we sat down, and he put me up for the evening. He's a very, very nice man. I'll always thank him for that. And but he's a cracking drummer, a really solid drummer, a real kind of bear of a drummer.
I personally have a certain affinity with Johnny just because he's a guitarist and so am I. And I think that he's very kind of he's very astute with like the stuff that he uses to get his sounds. He uses kind of a lot of like delay effects and things like that, and he's a very kind of technical guitarist. And he's not the kind of guitarist that's going to rip into some kind of Malmsteen-esque solo at any point, but his kind of talent lies in using what he's got to kind of eke out the emotion of the songs.
Guy, just like I said, he just really adds with his bass lines to the songs. I mean, that's the technical kind of like way of looking at him. But as a person, he's probably the most fun-loving and decadent of the four in my brief experience of him. And he'll kind of be last to bed and last up in the morning.
Coldplay's work schedule showed no signs of relenting, as in June 2000 the guys embarked upon their first headline tour, kicking off at the Cockpit in Leeds.
They actually played on the stage, as you can see behind me. There was just under 300 people in for the gig. Whilst they were playing, they were getting massive sort of applause, and I think they had about 2 encores afterwards as well. Sort of everyone screaming for them to come back on. So yeah, it was a rapturous response.
During the same tour in 2000, Coldplay always made a point of promoting their support acts.
Yeah, Coldplay are always very nice to their support band. They seem to pick bands they really like to help them gain exposure to, audiences across Europe or in America. So they've toured with Idlewild, and they toured with a band called Low Gold in 2000. Chris loved Low Gold so much that he actually sort of sound-checked for them, sang some of their song, and also played cricket with them, in between sound checks and the gigs, because Chris is a big cricket fan and quite a mean bowler.
Touring was just, it was such a, like I said already, it's like a really early point, and every show was sold out, and everywhere we went, they were just getting mobbed and stuff, and we just kind of were in a slipstream.
And the venues were like anything from like 900 to like 4,000 capacity, which was so massive compared to what we've been playing. And they were all sold out, like every single one. So we got to play to like 50,000 people in
A month.
10 dates or 20 dates, whatever it was, which was brilliant.
What's interesting at Coldplay Live is their ability. They're just 4 guys on stage. They're not massively animated. Chris Martin is coming out a bit more sort of lively. They're not hugely animated. They don't have props. They're not wearing spandex and perms. It's kind of like just came from the bar, really. But they do capture your attention. Inevitably, Chris Martin is the one that you end up looking at. But that's the same for most frontmen. I think they're a spectacular band live. It'll be interesting to see where the live show goes from Rush of Blood to the Head Tour, which was starting to evolve a few more dynamics. But will they start to get involved in live footage behind the band? Will they start to have another keyboard player, like a lot of bands do? Will they start to have a jazz section? Like, where's it going to go musically, and how will that work with the live show?
I think they're stronger than ever. I saw them play a small venue in Camden 3 years ago, and I saw them play All's Court this year, which is like 18,000 people, and Chris could reach the back of the hall, which is always the big test of an artist, to make the leap to the really big arenas and the stadiums. And very few people have managed it in 2 albums. And U2 took 5 albums to get there. So. And Coldplay got there in 2.
In June 2000, Coldplay played on the second stage